So that's sort of the overview of what's going on with XML, but why use it? That was one question that I hadn't really asked myself when I went there. I was really excited about learning about it and about doing it, but I didn't know really why I should. And as it turns out, XML, the reason that you want to use it is it's all about repurposing your data, about taking what you have and putting it into a different format or just doing different things with it. If you have a cookbook and you have all of your recipes in XML, it's really easy to just take a couple of them out and do something completely different with it. Have a recipe of the day on your website, or make an iPhone app that will that'll give you a random recipe. Stuff like that. My sister has an iPhone. I'm sad to say I don't have a smartphone yet, but my sister has an iPhone that has a restaurant search function. It looks like a slot machine, and you can just select sort of a couple of different variables like where you are, what quality restaurant you want, and all this, and then you shake it, and the wheels spin, and it comes up with your restaurant. That's a book. It's an ebook. It's a restaurant guidebook. It's just in a different form, and that's the kind of stuff that you can do with XML. That's the kind of repurposing you can do of your data. Um, right. So one of the other good things about XML is that it's it makes your documents a lot more searchable. Makes them relevant to machines. The computer, when it looks at a well marked up document, will be able to know that, okay, this is a heading and this is a subheading. So the heading is more important, so that's going to be more relevant to the search. The subheading is going to be a little bit less relevant. Um, this kind of stuff means that when your document goes online and when people search and find it, they're going to be qualified users. They're going to be people that you know are looking for that stuff and that didn't just sort of stumble across it because one random string of characters in it was right. So that's another great reason to go with XML. Also, chunking your data. Chunking is apparently the technical term. And what that means is basically it's taking a little bite-sized chunk of your data that you can, again, repurpose with, like taking a recipe and putting it online. Makes for very flexible documents, easier to shift things around. You can personalize things a lot more. This it doesn't have so much relevance in print, of course, although there was a guy at the conference, one of the vendors, was doing customized books that would include a couple of pages that were customized. Some of them they only had the rights where they could put a for Joe Smith or whatever at the front, but others they could actually change names throughout so that a children's book is about that child. Um, so personalization. And then the special aspects that I was talking about earlier, the stuff for the visually impaired, that sort of thing. So then, so we know why to use XML, who should be using it. Obviously, because XML is all about repurposing your data, people who are going to repurpose their data are the ones who should be using XML. That means that, by and large, nonfiction is going to derive more use from XML. Fiction stuff is not as easy to repurpose, though you can certainly do some really interesting things with it by making, I don't know, location-aware fiction where the time of day in the book will change depending on the time of day where you are or the season where you are, or that sort of thing. And then XML is really useful, of course, if you're planning on exchanging any data about your works because of all that metadata that's embedded, as long, again, as there are standards. So when should you integrate the XML into your workflow? There are a lot of options. Some of the Start with XML people, you can find them on the O'Reilly website. They were saying that they can start with the author. The author can start with the tagging of chunks and separation of content. or you can wait until after it's been designed and do your conversion to XML then. It really depends on what your situation is and how much you're going to be using the XML. Also, how sort of tech savvy and large your staff is. It takes people who know what they're doing with XML to be able to work with it throughout, because some issues do show up, especially in InDesign apparently, and footnotes. If a footnote hasn't been tagged explicitly as XML, sometimes it'll just get dropped from the document entirely, which could be an issue. So what are we doing at Ooligan? What we've decided is that for the majority of our titles, XML is not really that relevant, because we do at least half of our stuff as fiction and poetry, stuff that XML isn't as relevant for. Some of our nonfiction, there's some pretty neat possibilities for. I'm personally excited about doing some crazy stuff with the Portland Red Guide, geospatial awareness and things like that. But what that means is that we don't need to worry so much about it being a standard that we go for XML from the start all the way through. So we're going to take some of the books that we think would do well in XML and convert them after the fact, rather than go from the start. So